Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Inside Voices. I'm Joe Hepburn, Insight and Innovation Partner at RBH.
And I'm Mundip, Senior Performance Marketing Manager at RBH.
Today's episode is called We Need to Talk About Reddit. Mundip, why are we talking about Reddit in 2025?
Oh, there's so many things going on with them at the moment. So Google struck a licensing deal with Reddit in February 2024 worth $60 million. And that allowed them access to Reddit's data for use for AI learning. And in exchange, Reddit got access to Vertex AI from Google, which allows them to develop their platform so that they can use AI for search functions as well as moderation.
Okay, I didn't know that they got access to something back from Google as well.
Yeah, so there's a slight exchange there.
Okay. Why is that controversial?
So it's controversial because of what happened shortly after. So in August 2024, there was a Google core update, which essentially made massive changes to SEO and how the algorithm works. So Google was prioritizing content that was authentic and genuinely useful to users. And around the same time, Reddit actually creeped up all the way from 78th place in the SERPs all the way to 3rd. So you can see how it seems a little bit fishy that there's this partnership and suddenly there's an update and Reddit have creeped all the way up to the top on the first page.
So let's be really clear. Is that Reddit in general as a website, as a social platform, or is that when someone's asking a question, Reddits are being ranked higher now than they were before?
So it's the latter. It's the case that Reddit's been ranked a lot higher for very specific topics and very specific queries. And to be honest, the whole update came about because Google recognized there was a trend where users had their search query and they're adding Reddit to the end of it. So it's really clear users themselves were after a lot more authentic content and content that they felt was trustworthy.
So Google's taken or given $60 million and now they're ranking Reddit results number 3, you say, in search engine results pages, which
on
is
average.
what SERP stands for, by the way. And so is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? What's the controversy around that?
Well, the controversy around it is the fact that there's this partnership and there's a licensing agreement. And suddenly Reddit seems to be ranking a lot higher.
So people are suggesting that Reddit have paid for their results to be higher.
Yeah, that's exactly what people are suggesting. At the same time, it fits with this remit of Google wanting to prioritize content that's seen as more insightful and authentic and human generated. So yeah, it can be seen as very suspicious.
At the same time, me and you went to Brighton SEO last year, and we were there when Google were actually saying, we're going to remove the element that requires a human to have written the content, just as they were launching Gemini as an AI tool. Do you think that human is what they were going for? Is that an excuse as to why Reddit's up there? Or is it genuinely trying to prioritize authentic content?
I think they're going after more human content, to be honest. Because if you look at all the documentation and look at all the changes and how they've come into play, there's a flood of AI-based content now on search engines that's being indexed. So people are using it for trying to rank for traditional SEO terms. And I think because of this abundance of AI-based content, their whole platform doesn't have it doesn't have as much human input to try and let the algorithm learn and to try and let their AI model learn. So I think they're definitely going after something that's more human and more authentic.
Okay, so by taking Reddit's data, training Gemini and their AI crawling tools with it, you're actually inputting a great volume of human-generated content into AI overviews. So when you're searching for the answer to a question, perhaps about your Mercedes, you might find that there are people in a subreddit that have discussed your particular model in detail, and that answer might be pulled into the AI overview.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I think there are other ranking elements to it as well, because as you already know with Reddit, it will be the case that, different authors have, different karma points, discussions are upvoted, downvoted. So I think that's where the EAT guidelines also come into play, because there is some level of obviously moderation and what's deemed as trustworthy content to an extent.
Okay, so that opens up a whole other kettle of fish. You're suggesting that karma and upvotes equate to authority in this particular ranking. Now, karma and upvotes are given by other regular users, and they may be given because a piece of content is humorous, entertaining, controversial, whatever it might be. And that therefore means that they rank higher on Google SEO results. Do you think you agree with that? Does that sound fair to you?
Absolutely. I think it definitely equates to that. And that's how Google's recognizing if content's trustworthy and if it should be shown higher up in the SERPs.
Okay, so in a scenario where someone has posted memes about crabs for 3 months, and those memes about crabs have hit the front page of Reddit repeatedly, and they have thousands of karma, loads of upvotes, and then they suddenly answer a question on differential diagnosis for a human condition, that then gets ranked in the actual AI overview, and someone's looking at Legionnaire's disease. Is that fair?
That's not fair. No, absolutely not. Because they might be an expert on a particular topic, but then they might not be an expert on something else.
And that kind of opens up the Wikipedia can of worms again as well, doesn't it? Because Wikipedia showing up in search results has always been a tenuous subject, because should we be allowing Wikipedia to be an authority when anyone can contribute? Yes, again, there are ranking points for different contributors, and they get different allowances based on what they contributed before and the links that they give as well. But it feels like it opens up more loose acceptance on what's an authoritative piece of content versus what isn't, because if anything that someone posts on Reddit can end up in the AI overview, should brands be posting that they're the best brand and hope that if they post that in enough subreddits with enough karma points that they might end up being on the front page of Google as well as Reddit?
I think that's where, when we go into how the platform actually works and how, because there's that whole element of self-moderation within the platform itself. I think that's where we'll see if brands are going to try and converse within discussion groups, within subreddits. They need to be really authentic. They need to have, something to say or that sort of value to users. I think that's where specific, brands that aren't doing that won't be upvoted. They won't gain the karma points. I think that's why it's really important that brands that do end up on Reddit need to have something to say that's of value.
And what responsibility do you think Google has on mitigating any potential risks of false information and false news?
That's a good point.
It's a good question, isn't it? If you can get anyone to rank up because they got a load of karma. I got a load of karma for my post about Milton Keynes the other day from that magazine. If I now post something and it gets into that top part of Google, then because Google's gone, that's fair enough, he's got a lot of karma.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's all about human moderation as well. It's not just AI.
Yeah, but then who's moderating the moderators? Human moderation. I can become a moderator on a subreddit.
That's true.
Just like Wikipedia.
Oh, that's such a good question, man. That's thought provoking. That is.
Let's just go back a moment and look at the Google Core update. What were Google trying to do with that update?
So Google were trying to make sure that the content that users see when they search for particular queries is authentic and that it's genuinely useful to whatever it is that they're searching for. They want to make sure that they're not seeing content that's SEO farmed or commercialized. It genuinely answers their query.
Okay.
And that's really what they were going for.
And I suppose we've seen that in the way that we advertise on Google now. For all of our clients, we no longer focus on just keyword density. We're trying to answer questions. And often the best way in for a client, especially when bidding against other giants in their industry, is to find the niche questions that consumers or businesses are asking and then directing them to the relevant answer instead of just buy our product or service now. And so it kind of fits with what we've seen from an advertising side, which normally leads the organic side here. And you think that Reddit being in that part of it is going to help with the human elements of it then?
Definitely. And I think that's because definitely over the past year or so, we've seen things shift over from traditional SEO almost to answer engine optimization. And I think Reddit now ranking higher in the SERPs organically is definitely going to help with that, because it shifts us from the mindset of almost seeing Reddit as a nice to have channel or having a presence on Reddit as a nice to have. So now that needs to be incorporated into the overall SEO strategy.
Okay. So can brands afford to not be on Reddit?
I think some brands can. Some brands can, because I think when it comes to Reddit, you need to make sure you have the right thing to say on there. And also, obviously, there's an abundance of subreddits on there, an abundance of niches that are really applicable to brands. But you need to have the right tone of voice. You need to have the right sort of brand personality to be on the platform. Because if you're going to go on the platform and be really commercial, try and do a hard sell,
Yeah,
Redditors
Redditors won't take that. I
No.
know I wouldn't. Every community, regardless of whether it's about watches, video games, the news, or marketing, is so adamant that they don't want to be marketed to on that platform. And yet, we see so many people advertise on Reddit, and we know it works. So, how would you advertise on Reddit?
Well, with Reddit, I think the important thing is such a powerful platform to try and get in front of really niche audiences. And that's because the platform allows you to go beyond the general sort of interest and detailed targeting-based targeting options. So we would go after very specific subreddits that are applicable to the brand's product or service.
So let me stop you that you can advertise specifically on a subreddit.
Yeah, absolutely, you can. Which is why it's such a powerful marketing platform, because you can get in front of an audience that are already speaking about topics around your product or service, and you can become part of that conversation in placements that feel really native and really organic, provided the content's right.
For the audience at home, Reddit might not be used by everyone who's watching this video. Reddit is a social platform, right? It's like Twitter or X or Instagram or Facebook, but it's essentially forums, yes?
Yeah.
And what is a subreddit?
Well, a subreddit is essentially a topic of discussion. So it's a completely, it can be a really specific and very niche topic of discussion. So it might be around, you mentioned crabs earlier, it might be around red crabs. That could be a very specific niche, but there's tons of people globally that will be contributing to that discussion around that topic. And that's the really powerful thing. It brings community, it brings a sense of community, because you're not, unlike other platforms, you're not following individuals or users, you're following a topic of discussion, which is where I think Reddit is really set apart from other social platforms.
Because that forces a brand to talk in a more native tongue. It makes them talk with value. Because unless you're joining a conversation with something valuable to say, people will just ignore it. And the best ads that I have seen on Reddit are always ones that are contributing to a topic, or they're almost starting a topic in themselves. And they don't try and hide that they're from a brand. They try and integrate within the community. And do you think that it's something that we would be starting to run this year with clients?
Absolutely. I mean, we're already exploring it with clients who fall under very specific niches. Because again, like I said before, it's the case that this platform really allows us to get in front of a really hyper-targeted audience that's very specific, that a lot of platforms don't allow for. And when we talk about platforms in the sense of, are we responding to a behavior, or are we changing a behavior? This is one of the very few platforms that allows us to really respond to a behavior. Because users are going onto Reddit to try and discuss problems or queries they may have. And obviously there are loads of Redditors globally that are contributing to that discussion. And this, like I said before, it really allows us to become part of that discussion.
Okay, so it's a good place to advertise. We're already looking at that with our clients. There's subreddits that we can go really niche on. We can be contextual. We can add value as a brand. It's a fantastic platform for all those reasons. We think it's going to contribute to the human side of Google search results. But just for a second, let's go back to the controversy, because do you think it's fair that the data you upload to Reddit, let's say you've been uploading to Reddit for years with valuable advice on vintage Mercedes owners, that data that you provided, all that knowledge that you were happy to provide to that community of subredditors, is now owned by Google? It's been monetized. They made $60 million off of all of that wonderful consumer work that has gone towards all these communities. Is that a fair trade? Were we informed? Did we consent to our data being used in that way?
I think from a user perspective, it doesn't feel fair. And the level of communication, I don't think it was as clear as it possibly could have been. But as I said, from a user perspective, I don't feel like it is fair, because you originally went on that platform to have those discussions because you trusted the platform, you trusted the community. It felt like an authentic conversation. But I can understand why it's being used to train AI. And that standpoint is about making it more human. And like we said about, there's the abundance of AI-based content on search engines now. And this allows for a more human element to it.
But if we're training the AI content to be more human, and then the AI content that's written is written in a more human nature, can we tell the difference?
That's a very good point. Very, very good point. I think yeah, it almost blurs the line between what's AI and what's human. It blurs the line, making it harder to distinguish between the two.
If it's being trained and driven by humans, though, is there a problem with it being delivered in a human way?
Only when the information, I feel, is incorrect.
And so that goes back to my point.
Yeah.
Who's governing the information? If you say that it's moderators on Reddit, I don't buy it. I don't think that moderators on Reddit, they're not paid to do that. They're not checked. They're not. Your Uber driver's more checked than a moderator on Reddit who might be giving life-saving advice to someone searching for information on how to resuscitate someone. We want to make sure that there are checks and balances in there. I know that there are checks and balances in Bing on Microsoft because they have partnerships with the NHS. They actually are the default search engine for the NHS for a GP searching. And they have checks and balances in there, and the information that's given is checked and balanced. We know that from working with our clients like Nerve Tumors UK. So do you think Google should be putting some checks and balances in there?
Absolutely, they should be. I feel like it's their responsibility at this point with that. So yeah, absolutely they should.
And how do you think they should do that? I know that's a loaded question, but Facebook have farms. We know they have warehouses full of people checking content coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And we know from personal experience that doesn't work. They flag our videos for all sorts of things when they're completely irrelevant to those things. If Google were to try and implement something like that on a large scale, of course it would cost a lot of money, but we're not talking about millions of rows of data here or billions of rows of data here. We're talking about trillions of rows of data here. And to put checks and balances in there is almost impossible. And it brings up the question of censorship. At which point can we even start to censor the open internet? And is all information right to be sold, bought, and traded? If you don't have an answer, I'll give you mine. I believe that everything I put online is visible to everyone. I immediately let go of everything I put online. I don't claim anything over it. And I think that people need to be educated, even at a school level, as to when we post, private or not, who owns that data. Even Adobe updated their terms of services a few months ago to be very clear on who owns everything that you put into their platform. I don't have a problem with it. And actually, when I tried to delete all my data from Meta, all the ads that I got were, let's say, less relevant and a little bit more based on the only base information they knew about me. I prefer giving my information away as long as there's something in return. You said earlier that the communication from Reddit wasn't clear. I think they should have rewarded their community when they shared this information. Would you agree?
Absolutely agree. No, I absolutely agree with that point.
How do you feel about your data being commercialized and sold?
I have no problem with it. And I think that's because I'm a marketer. I understand it. I understand the premise of it. And as you said before, I understand the fact that whenever I put something online, you need to accept the fact that it's basically public. Regardless if you delete it or not, It's out there.
Absolutely.
I feel like that brings us on to something else that's happened. And that's Reddit's lawsuit against Anthropic.
So tell me what Anthropic have actually done.
So Anthropic data scraped Reddit's site to try and use all that valuable data that Reddit hold and those valuable discussions that Redditors are having to try and train their AI model.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what Google have done, though, right?
Correct, but Google paid for it.
Right.
Whereas Anthropic didn't. They did it illegally.
Right. And so Reddit are suing Anthropic.
They are, and it's based on terms of service. So Reddit have in their terms of service that it's absolutely prohibited to data scrape their site. And obviously, if they wanted to use that valuable data, they should have gone through a partnership similar to how Google did. So yeah, they're being sued at the moment for that.
So Anthropic can't crawl that data because they don't have the money to pay to crawl that data. So that opens the question of fair competition, right? That's what the basis of this lawsuit is all around. It's whether it's okay for a monopoly to exist between OpenAI and Google, where other companies that don't have $60 million plus to enter the game can't enter the game. And it's a pay-to-play situation. Do you think it's fair?
No, I don't think it's fair.
Is that because, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg were to start offering money, he could also start ranking number one. If Twitter, or X as it's now known, were to decide to go into partnership with Google, they could also rank really highly. At what point does it stop is why it's controversial. It's a slippery slope because any social platform or media platform, let's say it were a publishing company, or let's say it were a media outlet like CNN, if they were to enter a deal with Google saying, oh, let's let you train with using all of our wonderful articles that we've written on here. If they offer more than 60 million, will they get higher than the rank 3 spot that Reddit now occupies? I know that they're saying it's for human interpretation, but humans wrote those articles and humans wrote the books that Penguin Publishing Group publishes. So at what point does it stop? And is it slippery slope? Or do you think it stops at Reddit?
I think that's a really valid question, because it gets to the point where, although they're trying to move towards this really authentic, this authentic approach where they want users to be getting real answers, if the pockets are big enough, they could be getting answers that aren't authentic. Just because, a certain platform has paid more money to try and get more visibility. So,
or in the way that they would describe it, help train AI platforms. But
exactly.
in return, they'd end up with a high level of visibility. I think that if Meta were to do it, it would grab the headlines much more rigorously, because Reddit is still relatively unknown to the average user, but it's very, very, very popular amongst those that do use it. So if Meta were to enter a deal like that, that's when we'd start seeing headlines flying around on the front page of real news outlets. Does that make you worry about, let's say, investing in Reddit right now?
It does. But at the same time, I feel like with all these changes that have come about, Reddit almost has to sit somewhere within, within the multi-channel approach. It needs to sit somewhere, whether that be organic or whether that be through paid. It definitely, with all the changes that have come about, it definitely contributes to this whole idea of answer engine optimization. Because, for about a year now, everything's shifted very gradually from traditional SEO to more, answer engine optimization based changes to sites. So trying to incorporate those longer tail keywords. And it's not just about what's on your site now. Based off these changes, it's about what you're actually putting out on Reddit as well. And that's where it's about having something authentic and of value to say to the audience when you do contribute on Reddit.
And so that would be the overarching takeaway from this anyway, is that brands who are trying to engage on social media should have something to say. And if there is a slippery slope as to what social can be used for on an SEO basis, if it can always end up in search results and there's no limit to the people who can interact with Google in this way, really what we should be doing is not just acting on Reddit, though it's a powerful platform that we've agreed we should advertise on and our brands should advertise on. We should be acting in a way online that we're providing answers to questions people have, and we're behaving in a way that gives value to consumers and businesses when acting as a brand, regardless of whether it's on Reddit or on our website, because that's what follows the EEAT guidelines, right? That's what follows the rightful content and everything that we should be doing to try and give value to customers. And if we are providing content with value, it will rank, whether it's on Reddit or whether it's on the next platform that ends up giving money to Google or getting money from Google, or whichever way money gets passed, we'll end up ranking because we're giving content that answers questions people have.
So Joe, how do you see Reddit fitting into the wider strategy for a brand?
That's the same way that any channel fits into any strategy. It all follows a behavior. If there are people relevant to your brand having a discussion, that's where you should be, whether it's Reddit, X, Meta, and otherwise. That's the place to be. If you had 3 tips for advertising on Reddit right now for brands, what would they be?
That's easy. It'd be, first one is don't be salesy. Don't go onto a platform thinking, you can do a hard sell to Redditors, because it won't work. Redditors can see straight through that. Number 2 would be making sure that you have something of value to say to Redditors. You don't want to be shouting out into the void. You want to be talking to them in a way that, is consistent with how they speak within that subreddit. You want to make sure that you have something that's of value and that you're actually contributing to the wider discussion. Number 3 would be, if you are advertising on Reddit, make sure that you enable comments. Because, as we said before, you're entering into a dialogue. You're not going to be shouting out into the void. You want to be engaging with Redditors.
So thanks for listening to us rant about Reddit for the last however long. If you or any brands that you know are interested in advertising on Reddit or just posting on there, please do get in touch. We're a Reddit affiliated agency and ready to do so.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell icon. We're also on Spotify now.